Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Cobern, and today's episode, we're doing Jeremy Maclin versus Tyreek Hill.
There can be only one.
And this was a question submitted by James LOLL, probably LOL. I'm probably saying that wrong. But he submitted the question, Jeremy Maclin versus Tyreek Hill analytics battle, question mark? Yes, let's do that. Now, of course, just to give you some backstories on this sort of matter, Jeremy Maclin and Tyreek Hill are both wide receivers who were on the Kansas City Chiefs last year. Jeremy Maclin was released recently by the Kansas City Chiefs about a month ago or so, and the sort of conclusions that many people have been making is that, well, this obviously says a lot about Tyreek Hill, or it says the confidence they have in other sort of things. I don't know. The bottom line is Jeremy Maclin, Tyreek Hill, there seems to be very much a debate about this guy or that guy, this or that kind of thing. I figured, you know what, let's do that. Let's do a comparison of the two. I think Tyreek Hill is a very unique prospect in terms of just in the history of analytics in general. He's a very interesting sort of prospect to kind of decipher and figure out what exactly he's going to be long term. And Jeremy Maclin in his own right is a sort of interesting prospect as well, based on his data. And the data we're going to be using today in terms of comparisons is we're going to be looking at passing yardage, market share production. Passing yardage, market share production, for those that aren't familiar with that term, so you take an individual offensive statistic and you divide it by the team statistic. So in this case, you're taking passing yardage and you're dividing it by team yardage. So if a wide receiver had 250 yards in a 2,500 yard offense, and that wide receiver had 10% market share production, and you take that number, you compare it to every single wide receiver since the 1969 NFL draft class, and then you're able to compare what the great players did and performed when it comes to market share production for their age. And then, of course, we're going to look at athleticism metrics that mainly deals with explosive lower body strength, speed score, and flexibility. Explosive lower body strength is the vertical and the broad jump measured against mass density, which is weight divided by height. The 40-yard dash, or the speed score, is essentially the 40-yard dash measured against mass density, and the flexibility score is a short shell / recone measured against mass density to determine flexibility for their size. We're also going to be looking at what they did in the NFL, which is going to go by the same principle of passing yards, market share production. It's just instead of at the college level, it's at the NFL level. And with all of that out of the way, let's get to the list. Let's get to the battle, if you will. So starting with Jeremy Maclin, when it comes to his passing yards, market share production, he was a 68.61 score. That hit at least the 3-time Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to wide receivers since the 1969 NFL draft class, in terms of the majority of wide receivers that are like that. So he had very good production in terms of coming out of college at Missouri, pretty much hit the 3-time Pro Bowl sort of threshold stuff. So that's good. In terms of his athleticism, he had a 50.21 explosive lower body strength score, a 71.26 speed score, and a 49.63 flexibility score. Jeremy Maclin, in many ways, is a speed wide receiver. That's his best athletic trait. He at least has one trait that is above 54, which, when it comes to the wide receiver position, in terms of special wide receivers, in terms of every wide receiver, really, most of them had at least one athletic trait that was above 54 or higher, whether it was explosiveness, speed, or flexibility. And in Maclin's case, he has at least one trait in speed. So he's very much a speed wide receiver coming out. That's his main trait. That's his best trait, with about average explosiveness and flexibility. When it comes to his actual production at the NFL level, he's been pretty decent. In Philadelphia, he was kind of rocking about the highest he actually did in terms of his percentile score was 85.31 in 2010. He also had a couple injuries while he was there as well, but he did blossom a bit in 2014. He had his best sort of market share score of 92.93 out of 100. 2015 went to Kansas City and had his best season ever as a NFL player with a 95.66 market share production score for the NFL level, which is firmly as a top. He was basically a top 10 wide receiver in 2015 based on his market share production. And unfortunately, in 2016, his production kind of dipped a bit. Some of that, of course, was injury related. And then he just got released. Honestly, without having any medical information, it's really hard to kind of determine, was it the right decision to release Jeremy Maclin or not. Honestly, they would not have, in my opinion, they would not have dropped a player like this unless there actually was some medical reasons. Like this had nothing, I don't think this had anything to do with butting heads with coaching staffs or anything like that. I just think this had more to do with potential medical sort of concerns on paper. But Jeremy Maclin coming out, hit the profiles of a Pro Bowl wide receiver, did in fact get lots of opportunities to, he hasn't really hit 3-time Pro Bowl thresholds, of course, but he at least had the potential to do so. And maybe his injury history kind of played into why he wasn't able to maintain his health so that he could go to more Pro Bowls. But the bottom line is that he pretty much had the profile of a Pro Bowl wide receiver, and that's kind of helps him out a lot when it comes to the battle versus Tyreek Hill from that kind of standpoint. So then we get to Tyreek Hill. When it comes to his production, now keep in mind, this market share production score is from when he was at Alabama State, not when he was at Oklahoma State. But at Alabama State, Tyreek Hill's best passing yards market share production score in terms of as a wide receiver was 46.42 out of 100, which, as you can tell, doesn't hit the long-term starter threshold, the 3-time Pro Bowl threshold, the 3-time All-Pro threshold, or even the 5-time All-Pro threshold. And to just give you some perspective, most of the outliers, and these are just the outliers right here when it comes to this production score, are guys like Brett Perryman, Chris Callaway, Michael Jackson from Southern Miss, Vance Johnson from Arizona. Wes Welker is probably the best outlier out of all of them from Texas Tech. Brian Blades from Miami, Mark Jackson from Purdue, Dwight Clark from Clemson, Lavernius Coles from Florida State, Julian Edelman, and Antoine Randall, who were both more so quarterbacks when they were playing instead of wide receivers. So Tyreek Hill is a very unique wide receiver from the perspective of he really has to be an outlier to get into the best sort of range of possibilities. And the reason why the thresholds are the way the thresholds are is just because, as you can clearly see, every single Pro Bowler, with the exception of Wes Welker, was way above this number. Like, it's a very consistent theme since 1969 is Pro Bowl players are usually this productive. And while there are occasionally some players who break the mold, as you can see, there's definitely a decent amount of guys who broke the mold. It became long-term starters. But Tyreek Hill is a very unique wide receiver because, one, he was never really a wide receiver in his collegiate career. He was more so a running back slash wide receiver. In fact, he even reminds me a bit, not necessarily in terms of like his style, but reminds me of a lot. Back in the 70s, there was a lot of wide receivers, not really wide receivers, but running backs that were turned into tight ends. Like, for example, what's his? I think there's one guy in particular. Yeah, Emory Moorhead, for example, Colorado, was a guy that was he was a running back who was turned into a tight end at the NFL level. And there's some similarities, not necessarily in terms of talent, but just in terms of just like he's a unique situation. Tyreek Hill is very unique. He didn't produce a lot because of character stuff as well, because he basically had to leave the program at Oklahoma State due to character stuff off the field, went to West Alabama, and even at West Alabama wasn't really that productive. So there was a lot of red flags with Tyreek Hill. And it doesn't take away from his talent as a player, which, we get into some of his talent, but it's just that Tyreek Hill is very much a troubled wide receiver. Again, most of the time when you look at a guy and he's not productive, you ask the question why he wasn't productive. In Tyreek Hill's case, he very much wasn't productive because he was getting into trouble a lot and not really taking his career in college that seriously, I guess. It's the best sort of way to put it. But there's no doubt that in terms of athleticism, he's a tremendous athlete. I mean, getting into his athleticism scores, he had an 89.25 explosive lower body strength score, a 97.10 speed score, and a 98.62 flexibility score. So he is a elite level athlete, and there's no denying when you put on the film that he has great athleticism traits and just a great overall look to him, I guess, when it comes to just the way he moves in space and everything else like that. So I would say Tyreek Hill is just a case of there's just lots of issues in terms of production. Production really does inform production doesn't always inform talent as much as other things as well, like character, like having stuff off the field that interferes with your ability to play. And I would just say that those are just the major red flags with Tyreek Hill coming out of college. Is the fact that here you have a guy who's this elite level athlete and wasn't able to produce like an elite football player. And then when you actually look at his NFL production, he only had a 69.41 percentile score, which is kind of backup level. It's basically like number 3 wide receiver status is essentially what his production was last year in 2016. And he was more productive than Jeremy Maclin, though, last year, who, of course, had injuries that kind of led to the end of his season. But it still is not, like, amazing. 69.41 is not exactly that great, other than the splash plays here and there where he was productive. So I would just say when it comes to Tyreek Hill from an analytics perspective, he is someone that has athletic upside that's very clear from the data, but his production raises major red flags in terms of what exactly he's going to be long term, because as much as you could say, well, he's going to be the next Wes Welker and be that outlier breakout guy, there's only been one Wes Welker. Like, there's only been one guy like that. So I would say that Tyreek Hill is one of those guys that I think might be more likely to disappoint based on what he did in college in terms of his production, with a lot of things off the field informing why he wasn't productive, which could catch up to him in the NFL. So ultimately, who wins this battle, Jeremy Maclin versus Tyreek Hill? I would say that Jeremy Maclin pretty much wins this battle. He's proven to be a productive player, much more productive than not Jeremy Hill, but Tyreek Hill at the college level. He's also had 2 seasons in particular where he was 90 percentile level productive at the NFL level, which Tyreek Hill has yet to do. And I just think that when you look at them, sure, Tyreek Hill is definitely the better athlete all around. He has greater athleticism overall. But Maclin has just proven, even with injury history, has proven to be a much more reliable player with much higher proven upside than Tyreek Hill has in terms of his entire career, in terms of production and other sort of aspects to it. This is not to say that Tyreek Hill is going to be a terrible football player or that he's not going to have really high highs, if you will. I mean, he definitely has the athletic ability to have these really, really high highs in his career. But the last guy I really want to point out to is with Darren Sproles. Some people kind of compare Tyreek Hill to Darren Sproles, and there are some similarities in terms of height and sort of stuff like that. But this is actually not Jeremy Hill, but again, I keep saying that. Tyreek Hill compared to Darren Sproles in terms of production. Sproles was a guy coming out of college, had elite level production at the running back position, in terms of total all-purpose yardage. While Tyreek Hill has not been that, has been below average in terms of his entire career for the most part, in terms of production and everything else like that. So this is going to be an interesting case. I mean, I'm not saying that Tyreek Hill is automatically, his career is doomed. I'm just saying that there are a lot of red flags in his data pointing to the fact that as much as he is a tremendous athlete, as much as he does have a ton of talent, most of the time guys who have this type of production profile, regardless of athletic ability, end up disappointing in the long run. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is when you have guys like this. So again, I wish Tyreek Hill nothing but the best. I'm pretty sure, again, based on his athletic ability, he is a mismatch nightmare to deal with, but he's never quite proven at the college level or the NFL level that he can be an elite level wide receiver, let alone elite level producer. So we'll see what happens in the future. We'll see what happens this year, actually. But I just kind of worry about Tyreek Hill in terms of his future prospects when you have all those red flags coming out of college. And even when he has his rookie year, he's still just kind of middling third string level wide receiver production, even in his sort of breakout season. He's definitely a great special teamer. He's definitely going to be great in terms of those types of things. But I would just caution people who think that he's going to become this amazing Pro Bowl wide receiver for the next 3-4 years, especially with the fact that he didn't really play wide receiver that much. Like he definitely did do the sort of running back stuff out of the backfield, catching the football out of the backfield, but he wasn't, a full-time wide receiver for his entire college career. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to see, but I would just say when it comes down to it, Jeremy Maclin is the better player. I don't think Jeremy Maclin was cut because of what they had in Tyreek Hill. I just think Jeremy Maclin was likely cut because of things like injury concerns and other sort of stuff like that, that they just felt the need they had to make this move because of the sort of injury stuff that he has, which it's a cold business, but hey, that happens. So again, my name is James Cobern. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.